What up? What up? What up? Welcome to another season of New Orleans basketball. Hit the refresh button. It is your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrett G. Munner Rattler. We have moved on to the next season in the NBA. What's up with you, bro?
Yes, we have, man. Yes, we have. Man, it feels like it has been several years since we hopped on this podcast. In NBA time, it has been several
Whew.
years. A lot of things have changed. To players, man, it was so funny to see like trades happening during the finals because everybody was like, "You can do that." Everybody was so confused about what was going on. But yeah, man, people have been, moving. Teams have been trading people and trading picks. Oh, and by the way, the OKC Thunder won a championship in the midst of all of that happening. And so yeah, man, it's a new lease here. The draft is tomorrow. Feels like you've been talking about prospects left and right for months. All that's culminating into next year, man. Into tomorrow. So new fresh year, new fresh season. I don't know what happened to the Pelicans last year. I don't know about last year. I was not. I don't. That is now out of my mind. I don't know what happens. On to bigger and better things going on. So I'm good, man. I'm good on this. I just came back from the birthday trip. First of all, happy birthday to you, my brother. June 18th. It was a good week for us between June 18th and June 22nd. Both of our birthdays. But I was in Vegas. I went and enjoyed my birthday in Vegas. Caught the Aces playing the Fever. That was an incredible game at the T-Mobile Arena. The W is absolutely love the W. And now, we move on to the draft tomorrow, and I'm excited because right after draft comes Summer League. We'll be in the building for Summer League. So the basketball junkie and hoop lover in me is like, hey, it's like the night before Christmas because you get all these new people, coming into the league, all these new hoopers and players coming into the league. But also, we've seen a lot of transactions so far. Draft day is sure to be full of a lot of transactions as well. So I'm super duper excited and seeing where the Pelicans fit in all of this. So I'm good, man. How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed. We are right in spicy season. If you live in the South, and even if you live in the North, it's hot up there too.
I was about to say it ain't just the South. It's the
but
North.
yeah,
It's New York too.
Yeah, we are in the midst of it every day. Some legend, somebody's getting traded. It's crazy that you talk about OKC winning the title, and in some ways, especially if you're a small market team, you look at it and you say that's the blueprint for other small market teams, to become something. In other ways, if you're the Pelicans, you're like, man, they came and passed you up so fast overnight in 3 seasons, and now you're fighting to get to where they are today. And so in multiple ways, you kind of look from different facets. But the other part about this, to allude to your earlier point, this entire, I want to say 3 or 4 month stretch has been about the offseason because of all the movements that have already taken place and that has yet to take place. But in the middle, there was a damn good final series. And the way it ended with Tyrese going down, and you just felt as if all basketball watchers were robbed of something great because he started the game off hot. But even then, OKC wins the first title in franchise history. And the very next day, they're like, here goes the trades, here goes the draft. It better get popular. You don't even get to skulk in there.
You didn't even have to wait till biggest game of the season, game 7, all the marbles, one game, and the NBA is like, oh yeah, I got one better for you. We're gonna trade Kevin Durant before tip off. So the NBA is like no other.
Insane. It's just an incredible league. Again, shout out to OKC. They were the best team all year. They won the battle of attrition, even to the game 7 in multiple ways. They had their own serious injuries of their own that happened throughout the year to main rotation players, and they won in the end. Again, they're set up to look really good moving forward. And if I take anything from the finals and what teams are going to be emulating or trying to duplicate, just like the Celtics the year before, man, everybody on the court. And Isaiah Joe, shout out to Arkansas's finest, getting a championship ring. Isaiah Joe kind of got worked out of the rotation, but outside of him, they went 9-10 deep to the finals, Garrett. That people don't do that all through because they trusted everybody. Kenny Hustle, shout out to former Pelican great Kenny Hustle, in the finals taking 3-point shots because they trust everyone to be two-way players. And I think the league is about to look at that and look what happened with the Celtics the year before and say that is the mold of what teams need to become. Defense wins championship. We talked about that being the case. And the Pacers, the reason why they kind of turned the things around is because they was locking up on D2. And so like you see those things and you see people start to make moves, knowing in this new CBA that things are going to get tight. Money's going to be tight. You're going to have to change hands here and there. You can't be taking on bad contracts for shoot only players. Like I just think the landscape of the NBA is changing with the turn of OKC kind of taking the reins of the league. So with that being the case, of course, the Pelicans are in the middle of it. Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, Gary, they didn't even sit down to like get comfortable in the city. They didn't even have a beignet. They are already firing off trades. You start with the trade that, of course, sends the Pacers back their first-round pick next year. Tyrese Halliburton tears his Achilles in Game 7. He's going to miss all next season. Of course, the Pelicans execute that trade a few days before that happens. But tell me your thoughts about that one before we get to the blockbuster that went down today with CJ McCollum. What were your thoughts?
Yeah.
Do you think it was a good move to be aggressive now?
Well, first things first, I think this was Troy Weaver's and Joe Dumars' first introduction to New Orleans sports luck. It's what happens. All right. Welcome to New Orleans. Welcome to the sports family. Shit goes wrong a lot, right? Of course, when the Pelicans have the pick, the Pacers decide to go incredible and then go to the finals. And then you're like, okay, y'all are incredible. Y'all found something. Okay, well, boom, look, we're going to make the bet and we're going to trade y'all back y'all pick. And of course, the second you trade the back their pick, their franchise player goes down and they're probably not going to be as good next season. Although the East is going to be pretty bad. So, we'll see. But I think listen, the pick, the trade to get a pick, in this draft pick, in this draft class, I think it was a prudent move, especially if there's somebody that you're circling. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Ace Bailey and the Pelicans not wanting to go. Ace Bailey not wanting to go to these teams, and he might be on the Pelicans list, and the Pelicans might be interested. If the guy that you think that you like might be available past a certain point, cash it in and see. You could not have imagined that Tyrese Halliburton was going to tear his Achilles. You had no idea that was going to happen. So to hindsight it is just bad faith and not a good argument. I think, especially if you look at the East next season, the Pacers still might be decent because of all of the people, all the players hurt and people trading off players. The Celtics just traded off 2 of their core pieces, and so I think that they still might be decent to where that pick you won't miss the difference. It won't be that bad if it is a worse pick. But I do like the fact that the Pelicans are signaling or telling people that. This isn't, you heard a lot of David Griffin saying, this is the time for change and we're going to be proactive and things. And then obviously you traded for DeJounte Murray, but you never really saw these kind of shrewd moves and stuff things like that. The Pelicans are showing that they are willing to make these, Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, these guys. Shout out to Bryson Graham moving on to Atlanta to do his thing there. But the guys who are here now, Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars, the decision makers, have shown that they're going to make these moves and be aggressive if need be. And so I wasn't mad about the Pacers. I think it actually was a good trade, especially if you're circling somebody this offseason that you wanted to acquire, and switching out that pick and getting that early. I think it was a good bet.
Also, if you're in a win now mode with, which all indications seem to be that, if you're looking at a draft that you feel as if, hey, we just coming off a season where our 21st pick was the second team all rookie, Ease Misi, and we think this is a better draft than that. So we think we could maybe get another good player 23. Wouldn't you rather get that player now than some point next season, right? When things may be different and things on those lines. And so, and I look at that trade, I just think it gives you more options. It gives you more things to your point. If you want to package something together to go get someone early in tomorrow's draft, or you want to sit back and take two players that can contribute in different ways, it just gives you more options from that standpoint. Which leads to today's trade of CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and pick number 40. Again, the Pelicans did not have a second round pick. You walk into tomorrow, all of a sudden they got three in the draft total going into tomorrow. What are your thoughts? We've been talking about this. It's been staring everybody in the face. CJ McCollum probably not being on this roster next season. But I don't know if everyone saw Jordan Poole coming back in return. So what were your thoughts on the trade, how things work out, and what you're giving up in a player like CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk?
First of all, shout out to everybody that popped in. I know it's a late stream. Shout out Michael, RB, Don. Appreciate y'all falling through. So I mean, we asked the question: are they going to retool or rebuild? And Lord knows it's a repool. It's a repool. Listen, if you would have gave me like 100 like guesses of who the Pelicans would trade CJ McCollum for, and this is a Pelicans organization that is basically run by Joe Dumars and coached by Willie Green. I don't know if Jordan Poole would have been, guess number 99. I don't think I would have gotten to Jordan Poole. But hey, I think that's why it's a pretty decent look in a good listen. We've been, kind of mentioning CJ McCollum's contract situation, and what might come out of it, and if he was going to be on the team. I think everybody kind of saw that CJ McCollum was I won't say odd man out, but his contract being expiring and him probably not going to get another contract with the Pelicans. This was the kind of opportunity for a new regime to come in and maximize, his value, both on and off the court, but as well as his contract. And so when you think about, what CJ McCollum brought to this team as far as shooting, as far as floor spacing, you get a lot of that in Jordan Poole. He's obviously younger at 26 as opposed to 32. I think 32, 33, I vote CJ was. So you push that, you get a scorer that is more towards the age of Zion and Trey and all of those guys. And then you also get a guy. We were talking about this, we've been talking about this for years. Could the Pelicans get another guy who did not need to rely on Zion to generate their offense? Obviously, Trey Murphy has taken that leap, but he's still in the development of that. Jordan Poole came into the league doing that. Like, that's what he came in doing, was scoring the ball and getting shots up and things. And so I think from that standpoint, it's a good look. I think if you think about where his contract is, he's a guy that, like, if he does well this season, you either can look to reward him with another contract, or he'll be an expiring contract the following year. And so you can flip that contract and trade him off the same way you did CJ McCollum, right? And then get some more assets or whatever the case is there. And then I think, I talked to you about this, over the phone when it first happened, when I gave you a call about it. I think there is something to what I call the Kyrie Irving and Kristaps Porzingis effect. Meaning when you're young and you get drafted, and you're part of a team that has like a collective unit and is successful early, and then you start to get that disease of me, right? We saw it with James Harden, with the OKC Thunder. like I said, you saw it with Kristaps Porzingis with the Knicks and the Mavs, and then you saw it like I talk about with Kyrie Irving when he was with the Cavs, and LeBron got there and they decided to be, and they were so great. And then you go to a team and you become either the number one option or it's you and one other person. Like y'all are you driving this train now. And you don't get a lot of wins out of it, right? You saw it with Kristaps Porzingis in Washington, and Jordan Poole going to Washington from Golden State, and Kyrie Irving going from that Cavs team to the Celtics team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you learn, okay, it's very difficult being the number one option, and this is how I can maximize my game. And I think Jordan Poole now coming to a team where there's an established guy in Zion, there's an established second guy who's well known around the league. Just ask every fan of every team who is mocking Trey Murphy to their team. There's a second in command, and I think that kind of shift in role and understanding will do well with Jordan Poole. Now he's gonna come in and be asked to do a certain job and do a certain thing, and I think what he's gonna be asked to do, he's going to be really good at, and that's putting the ball in the hoop. And then you out of that, you also got Saddiq Bey, who before he tore his ACL in Atlanta, shout out to Bryce Lewis, who was we were on his Believe in Hawks podcast. We were talking about Saddiq Bey and how he was shooting the ball really well, and then he got injured. And so ironically, I think he got injured against the Pelicans, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. I think that having a guy like that come in, you've been looking for the Najee Marshall replacement, right? And could this guy be Javonte Green, be that guy? Mm-hmm. Could this be that? I think Saddiq Bey, if he's able, to come in and contribute and be on this, that's a rough and tough guy that Willie Green is going to like, but also he's a knockdown shooter. And so I think adding that to the pick now, to the trade, I think that is a great get. Now, I am a little upset that Kelly Olynyk was shipped out in a trade. I think Kelly Olynyk was going to be really, really, do really good things with the Pelicans this upcoming season. But in all trades, you got to give a little to get a little. And so you get those two players, and then you get an additional pick in tomorrow's draft, which again, with this draft being as highly regarded as it is good, good ammunition to have. And I think all of that together, I think the Pelicans did really well in this CJ McCollum trade. Again, Jordan Poole came out of left field. I would have never imagined a Joe Dumars, a Willie Green team to be like, yes, go get Jordan Poole. But again, clashing styles. You need a guy to come in and kind of just get buckets. And maybe this signals a little bit of a tone shift with Willie Green, who we know will not play you until you play defense. Now Jordan Poole averaged 1.3 steals a game last year, so it's not like he's just not known as a defender, but he has some kind of defensive playmaking chops. But maybe this is a signal where Willie Green will say, you know what, if we need this guy to come in and score, if that's what he's going to do, we'll give him we'll give him some minutes. So I think it's a good trade all around.
Right. I tend to agree. I want to start first with what you're giving up. So we've talked countless times about CJ McCollum and what he was brought to New Orleans to be. Not just the third wheel to Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, but the adult in the room to help a very young and, immature locker room grow up, right, in a lot of ways. And to no fault of his own, he really never got to experience the things that he was brought here to be of value to do, right, and to both on the court and off the court in a lot of regards. And so it never was his fault that the Pelicans didn't do well. Every game you're asking him to be the one or two option, and that's not what a 30-plus-year-old is being asked to do, right, from that standpoint. So you made this point on Twitter. Going from CJ McCollum to Jordan Poole in the locker room is quite a drastic difference. Especially with, a young Zion Williamson and the things that he enjoys. That's quite the difference. But in terms of like the play itself, now I think CJ McCollum is a much better catch and shoot player. From that standpoint, when you think of Jordan Poole, you think of Jordan Poole doing what? His bag and what he's doing with the ball and how he's dribbling. You don't think about Jordan Poole catch and shoot. Even in his time in Golden State, it was his time when he got on the court. He didn't care. He was the third. Yeah, he was the third splash. So he's never been the I'm going to accept this role because this is what the team has asked of me player in the past. Whereas CJ McCollum is his entire career has been a model of that and how he's been adaptable. And so I think there's some transition from that standpoint that the Pelicans are going to have to iron out. On the flip side of it, what have you been asking CJ to be all along, right? As you've seen the development of Trey Murphy, as you've seen what Zion has become and things on those things, you've wanted less of CJ on the ball and more catch and shoot, or in a perfect world where the Pelicans players don't fall off a cliff in game 1 and game 7 and game 9 and things like that, and you have everyone, you would want CJ to be the sixth man, right? Someone who come off the bench and get you buckets. Well, it just so happens that Jordan Poole fits that to a T. And so in a world where who knows what's going to happen with DeJounte Murray, because again, the Pelicans still have an overabundance of guards, and based off some of his comments this summer, it doesn't seem like he's in the best graces of the New Orleans Pelicans. So regardless of what happens with him, you've got options to say, well, it depends on who you draft at 7 and Jordan Poole and if DeJounte Murray's still on the team and is Jordan Hawkins going to take the next set. You're going to have different options of what you can plug and play. And I think that's a little bit different than what CJ was giving toward the end, because you could imagine Jordan Poole going on a run where he's just scoring for the team because somebody's out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever they may be. The older CJ gets, the less you're going to want him to do that. And so I just think that from that standpoint, there are some things that make a lot of sense. Now, Willie Green's from Michigan. Jordan Poole having to go to Michigan. Maybe there's some ties there that they know. Willie Green was at Golden State. I don't think that they make this trade if Willie Green's like, oh no, there's no way that we can control him. There's no way we can get him to rein it in and the craziness and things like that. I think that there's something to that there's faith from that standpoint. You mentioned Saddiq Bey. Again, somebody who's been tied to Joe Weaver in multiple stops. So right off the bat, Joe Dumars is going to get guys that Willie likes. Right off the bat, Troy Weaver is going to get guys that he likes. So they're going getting the guys that they think that they can mold and get the best out of. But outside of just the scoring ability of Jordan Poole and the shooting ability, Joe Dumars came out in the interview and he said he wants the Pelicans to be a team that people turn on the TV and they're excited to play. For better or for worse, it's going to be exciting with Jordan Poole and Zion and Trey. It's going to be exciting, but for real, from an on-court standpoint, you would think of CJ McCollum as more of a half-court player in terms of how he can excel in the best version of that. Jordan Poole can kind of push the tempo a little bit more, and I think that's what the Pelicans need in terms of the athletes that's built around this team. Look at what the finals look like. Not only was everyone two-way, but everyone was super conditioned because they're used to playing at a frenetic pace all year long, all game long. I think the Pelicans want to kind of mold their team to be like that as well. And so I think Jordan Poole plays more to that aspect than CJ does as well. So I think there's a lot of things that, again, overlap in terms of their skill set and what they'll be able to bring. And there's some other things that are different. But from a Saddiq, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want you to finish that about Saddiq Bey.
Saddiq Bey perspective, I think this is one of the gems of the trade, right? I see it a lot in the comments. We talked about the Najee Marshall and never really getting that replacement. We talked about Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance and all these bigger bodied wings that went out the door and never came back in a lot of ways. Saddiq Bey, I know he didn't play all last season, but that's the exact type of guy you need to be eating up minutes and to be able to space the floor next to Zion. So his skill set complements not only a need, but a gap that you've had on this team, as well as kind of is better for it than some of the guys you've had play that role in the past. And so I think that's a sneaky, really good pickup. I think the Kelly Olynyk piece, to your point, leaves another gap. Now you only got 2 guys over 6'10". So what are you about to do with that tomorrow? And what are you about to do with that in the trade market, things like that? But in terms of getting those 3-and-D wings, every single team is looking for 3-and-D wings, and you just got one that people probably forgot a little bit about because he didn't play last season on a really manageable contract where if it hits, great. If it doesn't, it's $6 million that's going somewhere else. What you had?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Especially the contract part. I think that's a big part in this. Let me ask you a question about this trade though. So after you heard about Joe Dumars and you heard his comments about Zion and about we're doubling down on this guy, sending him to the draft lottery and things like that. Is this trade? And it's crazy because Jordan Poole is young, but he does have a championship ring. Like he is as far as on the court, he is the OG now. We talk about who has gotten to the mountaintops and things. But Jordan Poole has had some things with him, right? Would you say that this trade, trading CJ, all the off-court stuff you're talking about, is this a vote of confidence or maybe not a vote of confidence, but more of a, now we're laying this at the foot of Zion, Trey Murphy, and Herb. There is no Brandon Ingram to blame this on anymore. There is no CJ McCollum to say, oh, come in and make us professionals. This is now your team. You are now the adult in the room as far as like commanding the respect of the locker room. Obviously Zion has things going on. But is this something where they say, you know what? CJ came in and did all of that. We're in year 7 now, Bucko. Like, it's time to take the training wheels off. Same thing for Trey Murphy. Same thing for Herb Jones. Like, you guys are now like the longest tenured Pelicans. You guys are now the OGs of the team. You guys are now the culture bearers. You guys are now the locker room bearers. What are you going to do with that? So what do you think about like that being part of what this is? Pushing Zion and Trey and Herb into what might be uncomfortable positions for them because they're, either mild-mannered or quiet or, have things going on. Now putting the onus of the team success in their hands and not having a lot of things to fall back on and blame on.
I think about it like this. Look at OKC. What did their roster look like?
Yeah,
pretty much everybody under 20
in the room,
like Caruso. So I think it's more about the individuals that you have and the maturity level that they have and how you can cultivate it and how you can grow. To your point, I think that the whole we're bought into Zion happened a long time ago, like January, February of this year. I think before the BI trade, I think we have decided that Zion is going to be what we stick with. Happened as you saw that develop over the back part of last year. And when he was on a minutes restriction and he was okay with it, even though he was dropping 30, I think that already has started. And to your point, and you've been saying it on this pod for quite some time, at some point, you can't look at your veteran to say, am I doing the right thing? At some point, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, you are either doing the right thing or you are not. And so to your point, I do think that the organization is all in on those guys. I see somebody in the comments saying, hey, the Pelicans are looking to add 3-and-D wings with Saddiq Bey and Mojave King that they traded. First of all, I'm not sure if Mojave King ever plays a minute for the Pelicans. He's not even doing well, in the G League and things like that. Saddiq Bey well. But my response to that and to you is, well, yes, they are buying into Trey and Herb and Zion and Eves and things like that. But they're also giving themselves a lot of pivots out, right? If something doesn't work, Trey's on a great contract. Like, Trey contract kicks in next year, and already I think it's a steal because I look at people who are making similar money, and I would say I would prefer Trey Murphy over that player. Same thing with Herb Jones, who probably has one of the best contracts in the league, and Zion, who's the volatile star. If shit goes to hell, you have an out, or you can have there's a trade. So yes, you're buying into them, and yes, you're doubling down, and yes, you're saying we're going to build around this crop or this core, but you're also leaving yourselves out because none of the contracts are like, well, this better work. Like none of this is the Rudy Gobert's where it's like, if you make it, you're stuck with it because nobody's going to want it afterwards. And so in a lot of ways, yes, you are changing the guard. You are pivoting from the Brandon Ingram, the David Griffin era into something new, but you're also leaving yourselves with different places that you can go in different spots. And so, and I think it's the bet that they have to make, right? Like, let's be honest, Garrick. If Zion doesn't figure it out, the Pelicans are going nowhere that they want to go. And so you either figure it out now that it's going where you want it to go or it's not, right? You can't kind of we kind of want to build around when BI because we know Zion's going to not be available. So we want to have a team that's built around Zion. But we also know that BI is not going to be available. So we want to have some shooters to build around Zion too. You're now building a cohesive team where your number one option complements your number two option, who complements the number three option, who your center complements your 2 through 3. So now you're building a team that's cohesive, collective. You've got, I would say, up until like roster spot 12, 13, guys you feel confident are not going to be a liability on either side of the court if you play them at different points in the season. And so now you're kind of building toward a collective of a team versus two teams together that you're trying to make work. And so I do agree with that point, and I do think it is a bet that Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver are taking in this young core. Now, what does all this mean and moving on from these players for the draft tomorrow? Well, like we started, Yves Missi and Karlo Magovic are the only players over 6'10". So the Pelicans have 3 picks tomorrow. All I know is that one of them better be a front court player, right? Whether they use all 3, whether they use 2 of the 3, whether they use one of the 3, one of them need to be a front court player. But what are some of the other things that you're thinking about from a draft perspective tomorrow that still might be in the motion for the Pelicans?
Yeah, you definitely have to address the big man. I think that's something that is mandatory, whether it's, through drafting a player or somebody else drafted and you trade, whatever the case is. The one thing that everybody's talking about, that everybody, is enamored with, and I'm one of them, is the idea of packaging 2 of those picks, moving up and trading to get Ace Bailey. Now, I think that only happens if Ace Bailey gets past number 3. I don't think this is something where, like, before the draft starts, you're going to see the Pelicans make this trade. I think this is one of those situations where, you hear reports of Philadelphia is willing to move back. I worry a lot about that because that means that they're probably looking to kind of get up on something, especially in like what's considered a 3 to 4 player draft, right? And 2 of the guys like are already gone. No question about 1 and 2. 3 is where things start to get a little murky. And so that's where most of the power is at pick number 3. Because it's like, hey, do you like this guy? Come get him. It's going to cost you 3 or 4, picks, but come get him. If he gets past 3 and gets to 4, where Charlotte is, I think that's one of the places where the Pelicans could call in and cash in 2 of the picks and move up and get Ace Bailey. But then this is what I talked to you about, off the pod when it first happened. That leaves you in the same similar situation, even if you get Ace Bailey, because at 6'8", you still don't have any big men. And Lord knows you don't want to go into the season the way the Lakers had to play the second half of the season when the Mark Williams trade didn't go through, and they were trying LeBron at the 5, and they was trying Rui Hachimura, and Jackson Hayes was getting starts in the play. You don't want to get to that point. So this trade for Jordan Poole, CJ was the piece that you could use to trade for a bigger player or whatever the case is, because he was the salary, but also value. When you trade him for another guard and also in Saddiq Bey, another wing, and then you also give up a big in the trade, you not only stay in the same place, but you actually worsen your front court rotation. So even if you draft Ace Bailey and you don't have any more picks from that day, then what is there to, how do you get a center, in that case? And so it's a very tricky situation now that Jordan Poole is on the market. I see people talking about fears of Trey Johnson. I just don't see that happening with Jordan Poole here now, as well as DeJounte Murray still at with such a premium at pick 7. This is a very premium pick. I don't know if you want to get somebody who's like, all right, well, look, not only are you not starting, but there's a bench player who's also going to be in front of you, and maybe DeJounte too, if and when he comes back. So you're three guards behind, and then that's not even talking about Jordan Hawkins and Jose Alvarado. Like those guys got to play. So it would be very difficult. Now, if you find somebody to take a DeJounte Murray off your hands, with the Achilles injury, then that changes a little bit of the geometry. But it's just tough seeing a guard be the pick. I think it's a big, or you trade up and do something to that nature of Ace Bailey. But I think the trade up to Ace Bailey, or just straight up taking one of these big men, whether it be Malawak or it be Derek Queen or any of that combination. I talked to you about the big man from Michigan. Was it Derek Wolf? I think Danny Wolf. Yeah, I think he's pretty. He's really talented, and I like his game. You could maybe get him at a later pick as well. So the thing about it is that the Pelicans have options, and I think the Ace Bailey thing kind of took a step back when Brooklyn made their trade, just a couple of hours ago, where they got even more, like 2 or 3 more picks, and now they have like 6 picks tomorrow. And if they want to go get Ace Bailey, it's gonna be very hard to match that unless you start throwing in players, which I don't think the Pelicans want to start talking about Herb and Trey and all of that. So I think I've settled on now that Jordan Poole is here. Getting Malawak or Derek Queen or one of those guys at that pick. Or if they're able to trade up for Ace Bailey, then I think you do that, and then you just kind of try to your best to figure out the other center position. But I think the fact that the Pelicans have options is like the best thing going into the draft, especially when you're not desperate for any kind of talent or anything like that. Obviously, you need a big, but you're not trying to swing the fences for the second to appease a upset number 1 option or whatever that case is.
Right. Couple things. So first off, when it comes to Ace Bailey, you and I agree. I do think his skill set would fit very well with the talent that already exists on the roster. And for years and years on this pod, we've talked about how the likes of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and sometimes CJ McCollum and sometimes different players have come along, and their shots have weighed so much because Zion was hurt and Brandon was hurt. So like you felt as if they needed to score 20 points a game, or it was a huge disappointment. In this scenario, Ace would come in and like, if you had an off game, it's okay because like Zion's still there and Trey's still there. And so if they lost, it's not because you lost, right? In that scenario. But like with this whole process with the draft, and you and I have talked about this off the pod, for a guy like Joe Dumars, who just came from being the disciplinary of the league, who just came from saying how he wanted the team to embody what the city is, and that's what he's seen work in different stops along his career. Either the Pelicans are behind Ace and like telling them that we wanted you, and then we dropped in the draft, so figure out a way to drop in the draft with us. Or I can see Joe Dumars being like, like we are not dealing with this nonsense. Like we just got over the Zion BS. We are not going through this again. I could see that happening very easily. And to your point, and to a lot of folks in the comments and some people I talked to and things like that, like it's just hard to find 7-foot athletic young players that have a lot of upside. Like you're not trading for those guys. They're going to be really expensive if you do that. You're not signing those guys because you're not a free agent destination. And if you do, you're overpaying. So the best way to get them is to draft them and to develop them and figure it out along the way. Very similar to San Antonio at 2. They got a bunch of guards, but if Dylan Harper is right there and he's clearly the second best player, You take the best player and you figure it out at a different point. And I think the Pelicans will be in a similar position if they do stay at 7. The thing I look at over the next 24, 48 hours, week, 2 weeks, can the Pelicans get another young guy to go with Carlo in ease and just have 3 stable of big men that you can develop and grow together? But then also go find a veteran big man too, who maybe a Thomas Bryant who just came from the final 3rd string. You don't have to pay a whole lot of money. They are okay being in the backup and mentoring some of the young guys like Eves and Carlo and whoever else. Like, if you can do those 2 things to pair with your monstrosity of guards that you already have on the team, I think that puts you in a really good position to be deep, to be versatile, and to be able to withstand different things or different injuries that you know are inevitable when you're the Pelicans.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about Jordan Poole. He played, I think, 68 games last year and 75-ish the year before. I was just about to say that's before he pays the New Orleans sports tax. And I don't know what it's gonna come in the form of, but that's before he pays the New Orleans sports tax. But you know he's there. But to your point, you have guys who, I guess I shouldn't say that. Theoretically, all of them should not be hurt at the same time. Theoretically, they should all not be hurt at the same time. But I do know the Pelicans. I do know New Orleans. But you should be able to withstand some of those times where people are hurt and not playing, because you just got a 26-year-old bucket getter who has gone to the promised land and won a ring. So for all his faults, he was a productive player on a winning team. And so if you can tap into some of that and a little less of the Washington Wizards unserious basketball, that should be able to help you and kind of drive where it goes. And my second point is that the big man situation, we just saw the Hawks trade for Kristaps Porzingis. Clint Capella is an unrestricted free agent. I would love for that to be the veteran big. He's been around Onyeka Okongwu and that big man kind of room and being mentoring him. I think he's made a lot of money as the starter. Now it's time to start looking at, the twilight of the career as a backup and give it spot minutes and things like that. That is a kind of move that I think, if that's something that you can get Clint Capella either locked up or like some kind of agreement where like when it's time when we can start signing players, the contract is yours. That's when you start to look into, okay, well, can we draft a Khan or get up for Ace? But if you don't have any big man plan at all, I do think that like at that point in time, that is where you need to look to see if you can get one of these big men in the draft.
I like I said, I think they need both. They get a veteran one and another young one, and just keep restocking the well. Again, OKC just won a championship, and they're set up to be able to do whatever they want over the next 5, 6, 7 drafts, because they can keep taking swings and keep doing different things. And I think the Pelicans need to leave that flexibility there. And so if Ace is the player that they've been kind of doing this behind the scenes stuff with before, great. But if not, go find quality players at 7, at 23, at 40, and continue to sign veterans to help bolster your ride, like an Alfred Payton, like players like that can help you in different ways, but don't always need to play and things on those lines. So, Garrick, we're less than 24 hours away. I feel like we've been looking it's funny. We've been looking toward this moment. Now, I'm not even going to say in 2025. Like, once, like, DeJounte got hurt and Zion's hamstring went and B.I.'s toe went and Trey's hamstring and like November of 2024, we were started looking forward to tomorrow, right?
Yeah, when we started saying adjust your expectations in November.
Right,
yeah.
Right. We were starting looking forward to tomorrow. So it is finally here. KD's going. He's on the Rockets. Jrue's on the Blazers. KP's on the Hawks. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 24 to 48
Desmond
hours?
Bain is on the Magic. Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see what's going to unfold because, again, I don't think it's necessarily going to be the free agency of this summer that gets everything popping. It's going to be these trades, and I think it's going to be a summer unlike one we've seen before. The NBA is going to look completely different going into next season.
I think though you opened this show about talking about what the finals and the playoffs kind of taught you and what you felt. I'm gonna close this show with what I think that the playoffs and the finals have shown us, and that is going to be driving this offseason for all the teams. Is that, man, OKC is set up and it's perfect and it's great looking forward. And we said the same shit about Boston last year. What I've learned is that these windows, especially in this new CBA, these windows are tight. I mean, you might be on top of the world, winning a championship in 1 year, and in one fall swoop, your star player could be out for the playoffs and next season, and you're trading off your best players just like that. And these windows shut so quick that when you have an opportunity to strike and do something for a year, you can't even plan for next year. If this is the year, you strike and you go for it. And I think that's what you see in Orlando. That's what you see in Houston. You see teams that say, I just watched the Pacers go to the finals and the Thunder go to the finals, and there's bodies laid all across the floor. What if we are the team that all the bodies lay across the floor for, and we end up in the conference finals? What if we are the team that all the bodies and we end up in the finals? This is that is what this has taught me. Boston, you could not have told me the day after the Celtics won a championship that the next year they'd be trading Jrue, they'd be trading Porzingis, they'd be entertaining trades for Jaylen Brown. They're not going to be competitive the next. No way possible. So as great as OKC is set up for, and as great as it look, all it takes, if anybody knows, is people in New Orleans. All it takes is an ankle sprain or a knock on wood, one of those lower body injuries, and your whole year is derailed. And so this is an opportunity for teams to go in and year by year by year. This is no longer what can you do 4 years from now and 3 years from now? And what is your team looking like this year? Because in 2 months, it could be totally different. And so that's what I've gotten out of this playoffs and this finals run. And I think that most teams are going to govern themselves accordingly.
I couldn't agree more. So with that being said, tomorrow night's the draft. We'll be back with you. By hook or by crook, we shall see. We're about to see what the Pelicans have in store. Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver been having on the trigger so far. So something tells me tomorrow's going to bring fireworks. What you got left for the people, Garrett?
As always, you never know what people are going through. So give someone a smile today. Yeah, man, we've been waiting for this, and this is the time. So I'm excited. I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks tomorrow, some unexpected things going on. And look, this is just it's a fun time to be a fan or whatever, because everybody is like, yep, this is my year. This is our year, except for like teams who missing a star player, obviously. Most people who have their healthy rosters are like, this is my year. And it's the best time because everybody's all hopeful and everybody's all happy. I can't wait to see how I'm looking forward to see how people receive the first Jordan Poole, like 1 for 8 from 3-point game, because I saw how people reacted to CJ McCollum, but I'm excited to see him in the Smoothie Kick Center with this team. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler, follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler, follow the podcast at NO_basketball, no E. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans Basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, Vino,